and they tried to sabotage my career without realizing I was the one authorizing their promotions. Stick around, because what started as a cheap betrayal turned into a masterclass in quiet revenge. And if you love stories where the underestimated one ends up on top, hit that subscribe button. Peace doesn't come from paychecks. But revenge? That kind of satisfaction comes in silence. I learned that 4 weeks ago when my relatives tried to block my executive promotion, unaware that I was the final sign-off on every advancement they'd ever received. My name is Elena Moreau, and in the tech investment world, I'm known simply as EM, founder of Obsidian Path Holdings. Publicly, I'm listed as head of innovation at Strathridge Equity Partners, a growth fund based in Boston. What they didn't realize? I became the controlling stakeholder 9 months ago through a fund I quietly built under a pseudonym using revenue from my predictive AI trading system, coded in my early 20s. That journey started 13 years ago. Back then, I was living in a shared apartment in Baltimore, coding by candlelight some nights, juggling freelance contracts and tutoring gigs. Meanwhile, my cousin Lucas flunked out of his marketing program, then resurfaced as a branding genius after my uncle pulled strings to get him a job at Strathridge. To them, I was just dependable, frugal Elena. Dependable didn't mean passive. I developed 2 analytics platforms, sold them anonymously, and reinvested every cent into shell ventures that quietly bought out Strathridge's voting stock. I let them believe I was struggling until Lucas and 2 others tried to block my rise to the executive board. I signed the promotion paperwork myself and terminated the instigator. Lucas. When the board named me head of innovation, they thought they were rewarding a brilliant but safe bet. They had no clue they just elevated their new majority owner. Lucas smirked at the next family cookout. Nice title, bump. Hope you can keep up. I took a sip of lemonade. We'll see. Strategy shifts when real capital's involved. My aunt jumped in. Maybe Lucas can show you the ropes. He's been overseeing global brand initiatives. I just nodded, smiling. I'll consider it. What they didn't know? The final acquisition documents were already notarized, signed, and locked away in my safe. Right next to the letter of resignation I'd quietly drafted for Lucas. But Lucas couldn't handle it. He had spent years as the family's golden boy, smooth talker, buzzword artist, the guy who turned every dinner toast into a TED Talk audition. I was background noise, the bookish one, overeducated, underacknowledged, always finding her lane. At first, Lucas casually dropped by Strathridge Equity under the guise of being a supportive cousin. I watched through the glass of the executive lounge as he shared drinks with the COO, laughing while implying I was overwhelmed and misaligned with the firm's vision. Then came the anonymous HR whispers, questions about my credentials, doubts about my career timeline, even claims that I had faked industry awards, all false, clever, calculated lies. When I confronted him, he didn't flinch. I'm just looking out for you, he said, voice smooth as ever. You know how it is, firms love a good diversity win these days. Just don't want you to get swept up before you're ready. He leaned in. But I'd hate to see you fall apart under pressure. I let him talk. I said nothing. Yesterday, a sleek navy folder arrived, sent directly to the boardroom. Inside, forged wire transfers, fabricated compliance breaches, and doctored data reports. Enough to trigger panic. The board called an emergency review for Monday, and I'll be there, with the truth. And the one thing Lucas doesn't know exists? Strathridge's updated ownership ledger. He must have caught wind of something through the internal gossip grapevine. At last night's family dinner, he was practically gleaming. The board wants me there tomorrow, he said smugly. Big changes coming. Total leadership realignment. Mom clasped her pearls. Dad lifted his scotch. Finally, he muttered. No one questioned why I hadn't been invited to this realignment of the division I supposedly ran. What they didn't know was that I spent the entire night compiling a dossier. Every manipulated email, every whispered accusation, every staged complaint, backed by metadata and timestamps. And one final document, the signed and sealed ownership transfer confirming my controlling interest. The board thinks I'm walking into a disciplinary hearing. They've forgotten who signs their bonus checks. At 7:30 a.m. I walked into Strathridge, iced matcha in hand, calm and sharp. At 8:45, Lucas strutted through the revolving doors in his loudest blazer, our parents in tow, smiles wide, unaware of the storm he'd walked into. They walked in like it was a ribbon-cutting ceremony. "Is the board ready for us?" Lucas asked, voice smooth, confidence overflowing. From my second-floor corner office, I watched them being escorted to the executive boardroom. I took a slow sip of my matcha and smiled. Every board member had received my dossier, time-stopped, substantiated, and emailed at 12:03 a.m. sharp. If you've ever waited for the moment when masks fall and truth walks in like a wrecking ball, don't miss what's next. Hit that subscribe button because this is where everything changed. At exactly 9:00 a.m., I stood, straightened my navy blazer, and stepped into the hallway. This was no longer about survival. It was about taking my place. If you've ever been underestimated, sidelined, or told you weren't executive material, don't blink. This was the day I stopped waiting to be chosen. I came to lead. Gerald Whitaker, Strathridge's board chair, was mid-sentence when I entered. "These allegations against Miss Moreau are..." "Apologies for the delay," I said evenly, sliding into the seat at the head of the table. Lucas turned, stunned, his smirk dissolved. "Elena, this is a closed session," he snapped. "You weren't invited." I folded my hands. Actually, I was never uninvited. A beat. It's hard to run a board meeting without the company's principal owner, wouldn't you agree? The silence cracked like glass. Lucas went pale. My aunt blinked rapidly, like she couldn't process it. My uncle shifted in his seat, half horrified. "What are you even saying?" Lucas scoffed. "Strathridge is publicly owned." "It was," I said calmly, nodding toward Marla, my executive assistant, who stepped forward with a sleek black folio. "Until 4 months ago, when it was fully acquired by Obsidian Path Holdings, LLC. I leaned forward slightly. "Care to guess who owns it?" Paper shuffled. Eyes widened. Realization swept across the room like a slow, dawning storm. "The anonymous buyout everyone's been whispering about?" I continued. "Not so anonymous anymore." Lucas's voice cracked. You're just..." I raised an eyebrow. "Careful, you're addressing the majority shareholder now." And just like that, the room shifted. "Just the data girl?" I smiled. "Just the quiet one?" "Yeah, I've heard that before." I glanced at Marla. "Would you?" She nodded and tapped her tablet. The room speakers came alive, filling with Lucas's voice, smooth, venomous, and damning, recorded in his own words. "She's book smart, sure," Lucas's voice sneered from the speaker. "But she doesn't have the spine for leadership." Another clip followed, recorded weeks earlier, same smug tone. "Honestly, she's a diversity checkbox. They had to pick someone." The room went still, the oxygen shifted. And just like that, the narrative Lucas had curated for years began to collapse, on him. A third clip echoed through the boardroom. "Has anyone looked at her department's numbers lately? I'm hearing things, whispers." Each seed of doubt, every strategic smear he'd planted, now played back in his own voice. There was no spin left, no deniability. Lucas sat frozen, colorless. The swagger was gone. The directors said nothing, but their silence spoke volumes. "And then," I said, reaching into my folio, I placed the manila folder on the table. Inside, the very same anonymous evidence Lucas had mailed to the board, complete with forged transactions, doctored screenshots, and falsified claims of fraud and misconduct. "A desperate attempt," I said evenly, "to sabotage executive leadership. Did you really think no one would vet this?" Lucas rasped. "I was protecting Strathridge." "No," I interrupted. "You are protecting your ego." He flared. "You've always been invisible, just the side act. You don't belong at the top." My voice didn't waver. No, Lucas. I'm the one who built the future you tried to sabotage, and I'm the one holding you accountable for every whisper, every lie, and every reckless risk you made this company bear. My aunt finally found her voice. Elena, surely you're not going to ruin your cousin's life over this. I turned to her, calm and cold, as if he didn't just try to ruin mine, as if you weren't here expecting to watch me crash. My uncle raised a hand halfway. We were just here to support Lucas. No, I said, locking eyes with him. You were doing what you've always done, betting on the wrong child. I turned to the board. Apologies for the tone of this meeting, but every person in this room needed to see what's really at stake. I folded my hands. Mr. Lucas Moreau has knowingly crossed ethical and legal lines in a deliberate campaign to undermine company leadership. The board chair, Gerald Whitaker, cleared his throat. Miss Moreau, what action do you propose? First, I said that all allegations against me be formally dismissed. Second, I move for immediate disciplinary action against Mr. Moreau for corporate misconduct. I paused, let the silence weigh, then continued. I also request that a formal report be submitted to Lucas's licensing board and every financial institution with which he is affiliated, complete with supporting documentation. His conduct must have professional consequences. You can't, Lucas croaked, voice cracking. You'll destroy everything I've built. Like you tried to destroy mine, I replied, my voice level, unwavering. The difference is, I brought proof. You brought fiction. I turned back to the board. Lastly, I request that Lucas Moreau and both of my extended family members present today be permanently barred from Strathridge Equity Partners property. Any attempt to contact employees or interfere with internal operations should trigger immediate legal action. Elena, please, my aunt whispered, tears streaking her foundation. We're still family. A quiet laugh escaped me, bitter and tired. Family celebrates your wins. Family lifts you when you fall. Family doesn't sabotage your legacy out of envy. I slid a final folder across the glossy boardroom table. Its gold-embossed cover gleamed under the overhead light. This, I said calmly, is the acquisition agreement from my first fintech venture. I sold it for $50 million 0 cents when I was 27. I looked directly at my uncle. His second company, a blockchain auditing platform, sold for $180 million 0 cents 2 years later. I could have bought you that oceanfront golf membership you always wanted, I added. Could have paid off every one of Lucas's failed ventures without blinking, but I didn't. They stared at the documents in stunned silence. The numbers rewrote everything they thought they knew about me. I stayed quiet, I said softly, because I needed to know who still stood with me when they believed I had nothing. My gaze landed on Lucas. You all failed that test. His voice was a whisper. You're destroying my career. No, I said. You destroyed it the moment you tried to bury mine. The only difference? I lifted the folders. I have the receipts. You have the guilt. I stood. This meeting is now adjourned. Gerald, please ensure the full record is archived. Then I turned toward them. Lucas, Aunt, Uncle. Security will escort you out. Wait, Lucas called out, his voice cracking. Please. I was jealous. He looked broken. I couldn't stand watching you win. We can fix this, right? We're still family. I paused at the doorway, then slowly turned back. Do you know what separates us, Lucas? He looked up, eyes rimmed with red, pride nowhere in sight. When you thought I was struggling, you kicked me lower. I exhaled softly. And when I was finally thriving, I stayed silent so you wouldn't feel small. A long pause settled between us. That's the difference between building something real and playing pretend with borrowed prestige. The weeks that followed were revealing. Lucas was terminated within 3 business days. Once the audio files and forged materials were officially reviewed, his exit was quiet but irreversible. Word of my majority stake in Strathridge Equity traveled fast through the finance world. Suddenly, these same networks that once hailed Lucas as a rising visionary started inquiring about me. My aunt left a voicemail full of apologies. My uncle sent a hesitant email. Lucas forwarded a vague, personal growth statement through his attorney. I archived all of it. 3 months later, I was reviewing late-stage acquisitions when Marla buzzed my office. "There's someone here, says it's personal." It was Lucas. But not the one I remembered. No tailored suit, no designer watch, just sneakers, jeans, and a gray hoodie. No arrogance, just fatigue. "I'm not here to argue," he said, raising a hand gently. "I just need to leave this with you." He set a manila folder on my desk. Old emails, login trails, screenshots, everything I used to try and discredit you. I've already forwarded it to the board. No spin, no cleanup. I studied him. "Why now?" He looked down. "Because you were right. You were building something. I was copying it and resenting you for it." He turned to leave, then hesitated at the door. "I'm starting over, interning at a local fintech incubator. No fake titles this time. I don't expect a second chance, but letting me fall, that taught me more than any praise ever did." He reached for the handle. "Lucas," I said softly. He paused, glancing back, just enough hope in his eyes to remind me of the cousin I once knew. "Send me your resume in a year," I said. "Not for leadership, but if you're serious about starting over the right way, we're always open to people willing to earn it from the ground up." A tear welled in his eye. He nodded. No spin, no clever exit line, just quiet acceptance. Then he turned and walked away. 6 months later, Strathridge Equity Partners had surpassed even my boldest projections. We expanded into 3 new sectors, welcomed a wave of impact-driven investors, and launched a mentorship fund focused on uplifting underrepresented founders, especially women of color breaking into tech and finance. It's real, it's lasting, and it's mine. My aunt and uncle still reach out occasionally, usually when they need something or when they're boasting about their trailblazing niece in rooms where they once tried to keep me invisible. I respond politely, but distantly. The approval I once craved, I don't need it anymore. The corner office they said I'd never earn overlooks the Boston Harbor. Some evenings I sit by the window as the sky glows amber, reflecting on betrayal, on patience, and the strange power that comes with being underestimated. Last week, a holiday card arrived in a plain white envelope. No grand apology, no manipulation, just a simple handwritten note. It was from Lucas. "You didn't win because of us. You succeeded in spite of us. I'm finally learning what it means to build something real." And maybe that's the truest kind of power. Not loud, not bitter, not theatrical. Just earn. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or made to feel like the supporting act in your own life, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what you've had to overcome, because I promise you, I've been there too. There was a time when I thought success had to be loud, that I had to prove myself constantly to people who never planned to clap for me. But I learned that true power doesn't come from recognition. It comes from resilience, from building something real even when no one is watching, especially then. If this story resonated with you, show your support by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts with me. I read them all, and your words matter more than you know. And remember this: you don't need permission to start. You don't need validation to keep going. You just need to believe in the version of yourself that's quietly putting in the work. That version, that's the one they'll never see coming until it's too late. So tell me, what are you building? Who are you becoming? Because if no one else tells you today, I believe in you. Let's rise, quietly and completely, together.